So let's dig right in, shall we? We have Mr. Dayo Akintobi joining us in our Lagos studio, a public affairs analyst. Mr. Akintobi, always great to have you, sir.
Good morning to you. Good morning to all our viewers.
Good morning. So Vanguard newspaper, Mr. Akintobi, is where we start off this morning, and it's 2027 yet again, and you see options before the North. That's how Vanguard leads. Faces tough choice over Tinubu. But guess what? Jonathan is also in the mix. Atiku, Obi, Amechi. Let's start with Jonathan Bit. Please, why is former President Goodluck Jonathan back in this mix? Is there any data, any sort of information that points to that for you?
It's funny that we've come all the way full circle from being the most clueless government that Nigeria has had to all of a sudden him being the beautiful bride in the upcoming 2027 elections. And what's really driving this move is the fact that the North is looking at which candidate to back that will be most beneficial to the North's self-interest.
I'm sorry, which of the Norths? Is it the North, West, North?
North as a monolith. North as a monolith, the northern interest. Remember, Nigerian politics is basically on that rotational system divided into North versus South. We don't micro-divide. And the North as an entity is looking at it and saying that to unseat President Tinubu, the best bet is likely to be a Southern candidate based on this rotational principle that the South has another 4 years to go after this term. Now, the idea for the North is how quickly can it come back to us? If a Peter Obi gets in, despite his assurance that he'll only do one term, what happens after 4 years when he says, oh, my constituents, the people say I'm doing well, they want me to go again? But a President Goodluck Jonathan is constitutionally restricted to one more term. So he's a safer bet to back by the North, because if he comes in, the North is guaranteed to come back in 2031, versus if an Obi or an Amechi, who are coming in for the first time, they could theoretically go 8 years, which means they won't come back to the North till 2035. So this is enlightened self-interest at play. What is the fastest way for power to devolve back to the North is to back Goodluck Jonathan. And apparently there's been quite a bit of consultations and a bit of talk. And I remember a short while ago, his wife, Patience Jonathan, said there was no possibility that he was coming back. But I understand he's been having consultations. He's met, I think, with IBB. He's met with stakeholders in the PDP. And I understand he's actually giving it some serious thought, and I won't be surprised if we see him throw his hat in the ring as one of the candidates for the PDP for the nomination for the presidential ticket in 2027.
I thought the North loves President Bola Tinubu. Whatever happened to that love?
Well, that seems to be a marriage gone sour in 2 short years, because yes, they did give him their backing in 2023, but they have some grievances. They say his appointments have been lopsided. They say his distribution of projects have been unfair and skewed, and that he's brought all of Lagos into his cabinet and his ministerial appointments, and that he's given short shrift to the North. Whether it is true, I mean, the administration has come back and tried to show data that their appointments have been balanced, their distribution of funds and projects have been equitable across the zones, but the North still has it in its head that they've been treated relatively unfairly by this administration, and there's no love lost between them at the moment, and they'd rather see somebody else there than for this administration to come back.
And it seems former President Goodluck Jonathan appears to be a beautiful bride yet again. But what happened to that commentary about the constitutional eligibility of a former president? You know, when he was president, he had served the concluding 2 years, I believe, of his principal, late Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, and then he got an additional term. You know, at the time in 2022, 2023, that was the commentary. So it seems, I don't know what it looks like for you, that, you know, these political juggernauts may have developed some form of amnesia about that concern about his eligibility.
Well, that's still an issue that needs to be litigated, but there's just a relatively ambiguous section of the Constitution that requires Supreme Court interpretation, and it simply says if you've taken the oath of office twice, you can't run again. So the question that needs answering is, when he completed President Yar'Adua's term, took the oath, does that constitute a term for him, or was it still President Yar'Adua's term that he was completing? If that's the case, if it's interpreted to be that he just completed President Yar'Adua's term, then he himself has actually only done one term. I think there will still be some jurisprudence around that, some litigation to clarify. See, the Constitution is a very general document. It can't address every aspect of human behavior. There are things that are occurring now that were never foreseen when the Constitution was written. Look at when President Yar'Adua died and President Jonathan was in limbo because President Yar'Adua didn't hand over to him. Constitution didn't anticipate that happening. Or look at even the situation in Kogi whereby a governor had been elected and died before he was sworn in. So who now becomes the substantive governor-elect? Is it his running mate, or is it the person who was second in the election? That required constitutional interpretation by the authorities, which is the Supreme Court, is the ultimate arbiter of such constitutional questions. So there's a lot of ambiguity in the Constitution. It's written in very general terms. And when we get to issues that were not anticipated by the Constitution, it now requires that we sit down and we interpret them. And I think this is what will happen when it comes to President Jonathan's legality of running a second or a third term, according to whoever's looking at it. From where I sit, I think he has the legal right to run again.
Well, we're not quite done with former President Jonathan, apparently. As we go to Leadership newspaper, it's also focusing on this former leader. Take a look at the front page. Corrupt politicians being given top government positions, as described to Emir Sanusi. But the real big story is this one. Jonathan chickened out of reforming PDP, a new book. I believe that's the book launch of former national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Chief Uche Secondus. There were, of course, so many other issues raised in that book, but the leadership chooses to look at this. But should the responsibility really be placed on the doorstep of former President Goodluck Jonathan alone, when you consider the founding fathers of the PDP, you know, their weight and their contributions and their standing in the Nigerian political landscape? And we could begin to mention a lot of them, but amid this crisis, we haven't seen them rise to the occasion.
Truth be told, even though the president or the highest office holder in any political structure is viewed as the leader, the truth is there's actually a separation between a political party and an administration. That is why a political party has its own EXCO, has its own NECO, has its own national working committee. The political party is supposed to administer itself independent of its members who are in power. There should be minimal interference from its administrations that are, from its members that are in positions of authority in terms of how the party is run. In actual fact, it should be the other way around. It's the party that should be dictating to its representatives at whatever level, whether at local council level, state government house, presidency. It's the party that should be making sure that its members maintain fidelity to the party's manifesto, because the president is in that office at the behest of the party. So he is beholden and loyal to the party. But the way it's come now is that our presidents are so all-powerful that the assumption is that they control the apron strings of the party. They should be the ones dictating what happens in the party and how the party is run. So the accusation that President Jonathan didn't restructure the party, I don't think it was his remit to do that to begin with. I think rather the party should have been the one teleguiding him and saying, you're not maintaining truthfulness to our manifesto, to our philosophy. You are veering off the beaten path. You need to get back and reorient yourself. The party should be a compass for what its members are doing in office and keeping them on the straight and narrow. So I think Uche Secondus, you know, he had a very turbulent reign as the chairman of the PDP during his time. I've resolved to read the book he has written so that there's better insight on what actually were the internal wranglings during his stay in office. But I think President Goodluck Jonathan, by his nature, there are some other leaders who are powerful and who are forceful, who, whether overtly or covertly, would actually be restructuring the party behind the scenes. But President Goodluck Jonathan never had that nature. It was not in his personality to do so, and he just went there and paid attention to what he was elected to do.
And there's a tribute on the front page of Leadership to late Doyin Abiola, Nigerian journalist who's wife of MKO Abiola, publisher as well. Even the president had paid tributes to her. Former colleagues in Concord, Tele Alake, Awoyinfa, additional paid tributes. Family to bring remains home from China. It's a page 7 read. Perhaps a lot of young people who didn't grow up in newspapers may not have known her, or definitely not have read her column far back, but a lot of people know the work that she did, and that's why you see that on the front page of the Leadership newspaper. New Telegraph is next, and I don't think this will shock some people, but it's important to mention it, and it's from the EFCC chairman saying many abandoned estates in Abuja owned not by politicians, not by billionaires, but by civil servants. But there's more, Mr. Akintobi. Civil servants who stole public funds. Are you shocked?
No, I'm not. Not at all.
But we should be shocked.
We should be shocked. We're inured to shock. We're so used to these kind of stories now that nothing shocks us anymore. But what I find more distressing is that rather than come out and say these things, who have you arrested? Well, who have you prosecuted? So you know that this is the situation. What have you done about it? We hear a lot of talk, a lot of we will do this, we will do that, and this is what's happening. But it's not matched with action. I would rather have that story with the headline, say 254 estates have been seized from the civil servants we've identified, not just coming to tell us that we know. So you know, but what have you done about it? I mean, everybody in Nigeria knows that the civil service is layered with corruption, even more so than the political appointees. We're aware of how it happens and what's going on. Matter of fact, the scuttlebutt is that it is the civil servants who actually teach the politicians when they get into office how to siphon and divert the funds. So the civil service is clearly riddled with corruption, we know. But efforts are always underway to address it, to arrest it, to circumvent it. But there seems to be more talk than actual action, because this to me is a lot of huff and puff, and after this, then what? After this, then what? What's going to happen to all the estates? And here they're saying they're unoccupied, which means that it's just a conduit for parking illicit funds. You see that all over the place, where you have massive structures and residential and commercial property that's empty. And you ask yourself, who's occupied? Where's the capacity for all of this infrastructure? And it suddenly occurs to you that this is just illicit money finding a place to park itself where it won't lose value, because there is no capacity to occupy all those places. They are out of the reach of the average man to afford. It's not that we don't have the population to occupy them, but how many Nigerians can afford to rent any of those apartments in these particular estates? So they lie empty. And you ask yourself, who can afford, if you legitimately borrowed money from the bank to build this thing, or your own savings that could be accruing interest in the bank, and your city is sitting empty for so long, you didn't do your feasibility studies to know if there was a market for it, if people could afford to rent it. So when you see these kind of things, you know it's a big white elephant that's hiding illicit money. And where's the illicit money coming from, if not from government coffers? So yes, clearly, it's money that was stolen, the Commonwealth that was stolen. But the FCC should not just come and press conference all the time. This particular leadership of the administration seems to like being in front of the cameras and seems to like to talk quite a bit. I prefer an EFCC that we see its actions and we don't hear from that much.
Absolutely. it's important for the war against corruption. If Jeffrey were here, he would say, go after those who steal Nigeria's money, whether they're civil servants or whether they're even elected public officials. And we're waiting, for the outcomes of investigations of politically exposed persons.
Yes.
And we could mention a few of them. But let's go to this Nigeria. This Nigeria focuses on where we started from on the program. Black Wednesday in Ghana. 2 ministers, 6 others die in helicopter crash. President Mahama calls it national tragedy, grief all over. Of course, it's been a black last 24 hours in Ghana, and the reports are to the effect that the last time a plane crash occurred of this nature was in 2014, and there was one before 2012. This surely raises concern about the airspace in Ghana.
Not just in Ghana, but in sub-Saharan Africa generally. There was even an incident at an airport in Nigeria yesterday where a major accident was narrowly averted, where people could have gotten injured. So I think generally in these climes, we're probably a little bit too lackadaisical about safety. May the souls of the people in Ghana, the 8 people that passed away, may their souls rest in peace. Clearly it's going to destabilize the government quite a bit, because those were 2 key ministers with key portfolios. So yes, the nation has been dealt a severe blow. The nation is in mourning, and it'll take a bit for them to restructure and begin to try and overcome the loss. But it just speaks to the fact that a lot more attention, a lot more resources, a lot more training needs to be invested in the aviation sector. It is a sector that doesn't forgive error. The slightest little error, you pay the ultimate penalty. So there's all the more reason why extra care and extra diligence should be paid to this. I saw the Minister for Aviation in Nigeria the other day on television talking about renovating the Murtala Mohammed Airport and spending, that the FEC approved so many 100 billion for the renovation. And through it all, I didn't hear much about safety. All I heard about was convenience, aesthetics, gateway to Nigeria in terms of national pride, but safety is the primary concern. I would have been happy if I heard that we're putting up a new radar station to monitor weather. I would have been happy to hear that we now have a new air traffic control tower. Yeah, he talked about expanding the apron so that wide-body planes can park closer, and issues of checking your bags. You don't have to go through the lift to the top floor with your bags. He talked about a lot of things that were more convenience related. But I think greater priority should be given to safety, and we can see that from these 2 incidents, the one in Nigeria yesterday and the one in Ghana, that a lot more attention needs to be paid to aviation safety.
Especially when you see that it was a Ghana Air Force helicopter.
Absolutely.
You expect that should be the safest.
Absolutely.
In that sense.
Yes.
But it's a really sad one, and once again, our hearts go to Ghana on this very sad one. And just to mention that Mr. Moyele Sowore had been, as we understand, invited by the police and is being detained. From what we hear, we understand that perhaps some sort of order had been gotten from the police to keep him prior to that. There's just a lot in the mix, but it's important for the police to come out and speak to the true situation of Mr. Omoyele Sowore. A lot of Nigerians saw him protesting in support of the police, retired police personnel, and even a lot of people in the police would tell you that they support that protest, because when they retire, they don't want to be given paltry sums and told to go home after serving their nation. So it's quite interesting to see the same police detaining him. So it's important for the police to come out and clear things out. Let us know the true state of Mr. Omoyele Sowore. The last time he put out a statement was hours ago, and that's very unusual because he's very, very
garrulous,
consistent when it comes to putting out posts online. But Mr. Akintobi, it's interesting to see, but we have to thank you so much for always coming to shed more light on the big stories.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll go on a break now, and when we return, the Labour Party conversation is next. Stay with us. We'll be right back.